coming into the year, we knew Alabama was going to have one of the deepest receiving rooms in the entire country. Not only did you have sophomore standout Ryan Williams, but the Tide also added former Miami wide receiver Isaiah Horton and were returning one of their top receivers from last year in Germie Bernard. Bernard is a player that many people are starting to really like as an NFL draft prospect, and it seems that he has turned a page in his development and is having one of the best seasons in his collegiate career. In today's video, we are going to talk about Bernard and why I think he can be a floor-raising wide receiver at the NFL level. But hey guys, if you guys are new to the channel, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. It helps me out a ton and lets me know that you guys are enjoying the videos. Comment down below which prospects you guys want to see in a future prospect spotlight just like this one, and without further ado, let's get into it. Germie Bernard has had a pretty interesting college journey and has done a lot of moving around in his 4 years in the NCAA. As a true freshman, Bernard started his collegiate career at Michigan State. He caught 7 passes for the Spartans before he transferred to Washington on the season where Washington would make the national title game. He was the wide receiver before on this team behind some future NFL talent, but he got some starting opportunities due to the injuries of Jalen McMillan, and he played pretty well, posting 35 receptions for 430 yards and 2 touchdowns. He entered the transfer portal one more time and followed Kalen DeBoer to Alabama, where he spent the last 2 seasons and been the definition of solid for the Crimson Tide. In 2024, Bernard had 50 receptions, 794 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the year. And so far in 2025, he looks to have taken yet another jump in his development, with 25 receptions for 392 yards and 5 touchdowns in just the first 5 games of the season. He's a really intriguing player that is generating quite a bit of buzz in the NFL draft community. The first thing I really like about Bernard is his ability to create separation and get open. He's one of the smartest wide receivers in the draft class. In man coverage, I think Bernard has gotten a lot better as a route runner throughout his career. He breaks in and out of his routes with quickness, and he knows how to set defenders up and utilize the middle of the field to his advantage. I thought he was great in that phase, but I also really loved what we saw from him against zone coverage. He's a very smart football player, and his ability to recognize zones, settle in the soft spots, and make himself available for the quarterback are really high-level stuff. He does a lot of his damage in the intermediate parts of the field, and I think he is shown to be a threat as a zone beater and in that intermediate part of the field. I also think Bernard has some of the best hands of any receiver in the draft class. He's not going to necessarily make the acrobatic catches, but if you throw him the football, he's likely going to come down with it. Through his career, Bernard has just 3 drops and a 2.5% drop rate, and I think, once again, he's just Mr. Reliable in the middle of the field. I also like the versatility that Bernard can bring to an offense. Alabama uses him all over their formation. He's used a lot as the motion man in their offense, but he's taken snaps in the backfield, he's taken snaps out wide, but I think he's going to be a primary power slot receiver, but he brings you a ton of positional versatility. Like I said, I expect him to be used in that power slot role because he isn't the biggest guy in the world, but I love how multiple he makes your offense and how you can use him in such a variety of different ways. In terms of athleticism, Bernard is a good athlete. However, I wouldn't say he's a great one. For one thing, I don't think Bernard has great long speed. I don't see him as a true vertical burner, and while he hasn't run an official 40 time, I expect it to be somewhere in the low 4.4s or the high 4.5s. It is strange, however, because after the catch, I do think you see good explosiveness. I think he has a good first step, but I would say Bernard is much more quick than he is fast, and he's great at making guys miss after the catch. He also doesn't have the greatest frame to be a true boundary receiver in my opinion, listed at just 6 foot even, 202 pounds. It's not a bad frame, but we talked about it, I think because of the smaller frame and the lack of elite traits, I view him as more of a slot receiver at the next level. I also worry about the physical aspects of the wide receiver position that I just think Bernard has got to improve upon. He's a solid blocker at times with good overall technique, but I don't view him as a great contested catch weapon, nor as a guy who can thrive against press coverage. He has just a 36.8% contested catch rate throughout his career, which is a number that I would like to see improve, but more than that, I just don't see Bernard thrive against press coverage very often, and it is a big reason why I view him as a slot, and a big reason why I think he's used so much as the motion man in the Alabama offense. I want to see him be a bit more physically imposing at the next level, improve his release package against press coverage, and show a bit more physicality at the catch point before I could really view him as a top-tier wide receiver prospect in this class. Germie Bernard is a floor-raising wide receiver. No, he's not going to be this superstar athlete or physically imposing monster, but he's a smart wide receiver who's got great hands, can run good routes, he's very smart against zone coverage, and that's what you need in the modern NFL, and more teams are looking for players like this. I'm not saying he's going to be a Jackson Smith-Njigba or an Emeka Egbuka or Puka Nacua, but he's cut from the same cloth in terms of his skill set and what he thrives in. And I do think he's going to get taken relatively high, and I have Bernard as my wide receiver 8 in this draft class. Ultimately, I do think there are some better athletes ahead of him with just a little bit more of a higher ceiling, but I still have a top 75 grade on Bernard and think he's going to make an offense better at the NFL level. In terms of a scheme fit, we've talked about it throughout the video. I think Bernard works best as a big slot receiver at the next level. With his ability to find soft spots in the zone, work across the middle of the field, and with his struggles against more physical coverage, I think Bernard is best suited in a slot role where an offense can move him around the formation and he can make plays across the middle of the field in motion, similarly to what Alabama has him doing this year. My player comparison for Germie Bernard is Robert Woods. Woods in his prime was a very similar type of player. He was a bigger slot receiver who was a fantastic route runner, had reliable hands, worked across the middle of the field very well, and was pretty solid after the catch. He never blew you away with his athleticism and was never viewed as a true number one receiver, but always thrived as a second or third option and was excellent at working the middle. That's how I view Germie Bernard. They have similar measurements. Athletically, I think they're very similar, and I could see him having a very similar career to what Robert Woods did for all those years. Germie Bernard is a reliable weapon. He is such a savvy player with a high football IQ, and for that reason, I believe that Germie Bernard will be a second to a third round pick in the 2026 NFL Draft.